Okay, good evening. Hello, check, check, test. No checks, cash only. All right. Hope everybody had a great day, great week. It is Tuesday, 7 p.m. Okay, good evening. Hello, check. Sounds like everything's working well, so hi. Wow, we had a hell of a day today. I'm telling you what, I did post a quick video a couple hours ago, me whining about the snow we had. Excuse me, at 8 o'clock this morning, we had 8 inches. 6, okay. And by the time I got home from getting my dad's taxes done, the estate taxes done, and all that crap, we had another 5 inches I had to shovel. And so I'm pretty sure we got a short 12 inches today. Really weird spring storm, but it's been a really nasty winter. Go over and check it out. It's only a 50-second video, 55 seconds. There on my YouTube channel. If you're so inclined, you might get a kick out of it. And so yeah, good evening everybody. Let's run over and see who all's in the chat room tonight. Gary's in from Arizona, and Vincent RV Life down in the Florida Panhandle. Kevin Coop checking in from Missouri. George, aka Dad, coming to us from down there. I think George is still in Florida. Let's see, I was going to do this. Let's see if I can find this real quick. No, it looks like I'm going to have to go here, and then here, and then there. And let's see. Okay, we got to do all kinds of switching and swapping and bumping around. So, come on. There we go. There's our friend George, proving that he does know what a snow shovel is. Anyway, that's a pretty funny picture. Good to see you, George. And then let's see who else is in the chat tonight. Hold on. Got a lot of stuff open here. I freely admit I have felt like crap since we last spoke. Probably just getting back to feeling somewhat like a human being again. I spent most of the last week on the couch. You can tell from my office it is a total disaster. But now that I'm feeling a little better, and I'll get it all cleaned up. Eric Myers is checking in. Hey, Eric. John Besmick is checking in. Hi, John. And let's see who else is in. Looks like Montana Boy is in, as is Judy Kimbrough. Hi, Judy. Nice to see you tonight. Oh, Tammy Mary, there's a new face and new name from Mesa, Arizona. Hi, Tammy, so nice to see you. Two Feathers is in. Hello, Two. Let it snow somewhere else, that's what I say. Oh, George is in LaBelle, Florida. Yeah, Montana Boy is up in Missoula, the banana belt of Montana. And Eric's back near Bakersfield, California. And lighting is good today. Thanks, Robert. Good to see you in tonight. So nice to have you all here tonight. We're going to be chatting a little bit about selecting wire size and making up a cable. I do have a little bit of video to share on making up a cable, and then I do have my favorite chart when it comes to figuring out wire sizes, and then I'll share that with you. But I just wanted to ask everybody, I think I know the answer to this, but what do you think of YouTube Shorts? Do you guys watch them? Do you like them? Do you hate them? I personally don't like them. I have resisted making YouTube Shorts. I'm greatly concerned, I guess, at the dumbing down of the population and such that they can only have an attention span of 1 minute or less. You can blame that on that TikTok crap, which I have not even ever logged on to. But I was just curious, what do you guys think about shorts, the YouTube shorts? If I made them, would you watch them, or would you not watch them? I guess that's probably the bulk of that for the question of the day. So let's see here. RV Living Life, hey, we haven't seen you for a while. Good to have you in. And Gary says he's not a fan. I agree with you that. Eric Meyer says sometimes. Okay, I would say I've never been on TikTok, but I have watched a few shorts on YouTube from creators that I watch regularly. David Cockrell, hey Dave, good to see you tonight. Montana Boy says YouTube Shorts are better than Facebook Reels. Yeah, I agree with that. I don't do Reels either. Well, I did a reel on Instagram today of the video I posted, either also on YouTube and then over on my Facebook channel. Links to all those are in the description of the video, by the way. Montana Boy says he would pay to just watch me shovel the walk again. I probably would pass on that. I hope I don't have to shovel again before next fall, winter. Keeping our fingers crossed. Robert Black says, and I think this is probably hitting it on the head of the nail there, Robert. He watches the shorts because YouTube's makes some creators make them. Some channels work good with all shorts. I guess the general take is, at least some of the creators that I watch regularly are sort of resistant to making shorts. I want to make meaningful content that is enjoyable to watch, for whatever that's worth. Tammy Mary says, I like shorts only for brief but complete concepts. You could use them for tips, and I definitely watch them. I don't always have time to watch videos that are longer than 10 minutes. Yeah, and I try to keep, like, my RV how-to videos tend to be a little longer because I put a little bit more detail in those. On the truck camper renovation, I try to keep them around 12 minutes or so. On some of my other videos, I usually, I'll shorten them up. It depends on how much content I have available, really, when it comes down to making the videos. But I'm considering it, I guess, but I wouldn't say that I'm going to do too much with them, for whatever that's worth. Let's see. I'm going to just scan back through the comments here. I've seen a few roll through that I didn't get to chat about. Kevin Coop complaining that it was 80 degrees in Missouri. Yeah, but guess what, Kevin? We don't have tornadoes. Wink, wink. Let's see. George says he's only exposed to the risks of snow from Thanksgiving to Christmas because he goes home for Christmas and Thanksgiving. Let's see. Moving on. Okay, there it is as the crowd goes. Well, okay. Security attempts to protect me from the public. Yeah, you're a funny guy, Montana Boy. We ought to have a beer one of these days. Recovering from a motorcycle crash. Yikes. That was last year. Okay, I see. June of last year. Broke clavicle, scapula, and 2 ribs. And ribs 2 through 8. Ouch. That's gotta hurt. Yes, Montana Boy, the shoveling is done. And in fact, the roads are already starting to melt. This will all be gone by Thursday or Friday, I think, except where it's piled up, 24 inches high because I had to shovel the walks. Tim's in. Hi, Tim. Good to see you tonight. Okay, Tammy, I will not. She says, don't discontinue my longer videos. No, I won't. And I totally get that sometimes people don't have time to watch them, but they're always there. I just, I leave them out there for people to watch when they can. And, every little bit of your support is always greatly appreciated. Tim says he watches them when there's nothing better to do. But yes, the vast majority are so bad it's laughable. I do like calling them out on their stupidity. I do too sometimes. Dave says he's been focusing on YouTube, trying to grow on it. Not really into trying growth on the others. I'm with you, Dave. I'm still getting over this. I had RSV. That's that respiratory virus that's been bad this winter. In fact, earlier this winter, it's the one that was getting all the kiddies really sick. The kids, I should say. And so it's finally going away, but I still got a little bit in my head and a little bit blowing into my chest. Gary says it's windy in Arizona. Yeah, it looked like, and you had some cold temperatures too. What did I see? It was 59 in Phoenix. Was that yesterday or something? The heat is relentless in Florida. Yeah, over 90 a day after day for what it seems like months. You know, I would take a 90-degree day for just maybe one or two, and then it could go back and be in the 70s continuously and permanently, like it is, you know, over where Scotty and Tom and those guys are at over in, you know, Washington, Western Washington. Montana Boy says, he laughs, he says, you name the place when you get over there to Lolo Highway and 93 and Highway 12. I'm in Pocatello, so I'm in southeastern Idaho. I'm right at the intersection of I-15 and I-86, but Pocatello is where I'm at. And it was just a weird conversion zone that set up today and brought us all the weather. Excuse me. Tim says some other RV content makers have done a decent job of putting out snippets of their longer YouTube videos, just hitting on the meat of their videos. Yeah, and in fact, I keep getting, I've got 2 or 3 offers from a company that supposedly will automagically grind up your YouTube videos and turn them into shorts, and I'm actually considering doing that. But we'll see. You know, I'm not going to commit to anything at this point. Dave Cockrell says his last 2 are 1 and 2 of a 3-part slide-out floor replacement, 1 old rotted out. Yeah, David, would you kick me an email? I think I've subscribed to your channel, but I'm not sure. But do kick me an email, trbolin@gmail.com. And if you do it before the end of the stream, I'll be sure and save your channel or share your channel. Also, Gary D has a channel. RV Living Life commented on shorts. He says he's dabbled with the shorts. They seem to fall off rather quickly on views. A decent YouTube video can just keep climbing on views. That's absolutely true, and it also really depends on the content. I mean, you know, my general RVing and RV how-to videos are constantly getting views over and over. The truck camper series, you know, it appeals to a kind of a limited audience, and so, you know, I'm happy if it gets 200 to 300 views each video. But then you're right, they just keep growing and they keep adding certain views to it. It's all about content. It totally is. Robert Black agrees with Tim, and John Besmick says he enjoys my YouTube videos. Well, thanks, guys. You know, I appreciate all the feedback. Let's get on with tonight's topic, which was selecting wire sizes. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run over here. I'm going to pop up a chart that is the most useful one that I have ever found when it comes to selecting wire size. And we're going to talk about something just a minute here. We're going to talk about a concept called ampacity. And what ampacity is a big fancy word that gives you a measure of how many amps a particular piece of wire of a particular length can carry with a given voltage drop. So let me just check one thing here, make sure that, okay, it looks good, thanks. Okay, so there's this chart comes from Blue Sea Systems. This is not my work. I freely admit that I've swiped it and I use it regularly, but these guys put this chart together and it makes the easiest, most graphic sense to me. And we're going to talk about a couple of critical things. One's voltage drop, And then, of course, the current carrying capacity. The voltage drop, there's two kinds. There's the 10% voltage drop, which they consider non-critical. And we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about that tonight. We are going to talk about the 3% voltage drop. And so if you look at this chart and you look at this column right here, I'm assuming you can see my cursor. 3% voltage drop is the number we're working with. And then in this column here is the length of the cable in feet and in meters, of course. And then if we go to continue to the right of the page here, the top here is the amount of amps, the number of amps you're carrying on the cable, and you follow this down. So if you're driving 15 amps and you're going 10 feet, you need to use 12 gauge wire. Now, when you're sizing wire for a solar system, alternator charging system, putting in some kind of a new 12 volt widget in your RV, camper, whatever, you want to go with the maximum amperage that device can either provide, if it's a solar panel or solar panels, and or what the maximum amperage is of the whatever, like if it's an alternator and you're trying to charge your batteries off your alternator. Okay, so I had a particular example that I was going to give, and that is when I replaced the roof on my RV. There was 10 gauge wire already to the roof for the solar prep. Okay, and so when Newmar manufactured my coach, they provided 10 gauge wire from the roof all the way down to the battery, well, to the electrical compartment on the driver's side of the coach. And so with 10 gauge wire, and that wire length I estimated is, well, Kevin, I have to say that I have to simplify things. I could get into much more detail, but I'm not going to tonight. But anyway, I had 10 gauge wire, and so what I did was I engineered my solar system to be able to use that 10 gauge wire. I figured I had about a 10-foot drop from the roof down to the place where I was going to put my solar charge controller. And so what I did was I engineered my solar panels so that I could use that 10 gauge wire without having to pull new wire. Okay, so in that particular case, I was able to go up to the 10 feet. Okay, but if you're running like large amounts of current, let's say you're working in your battery compartment, and you can see here, you can get out here to number 1 wire or 2-aught wire and be able to pull, 200 amps, 150 amps over these distances. Okay, so using this chart is going to be the easiest way that you can figure out what size wire you need to use. All right, I hope that makes sense. Correct. Montana Boy says number 10 will usually run 30 amps up to about 10 feet. Now you can stretch it out a little bit to 15. I don't think that would be a huge problem. This is not, we're not driving a whole house here. We're talking about an RV. And so, but the longer the wire, the larger it's going to have to be to carry the same amount of current. So let's stick with our 30 amp assumption here, 30 amps. And so if we're running 20 feet, then we probably need to be using number 6 wire. You see here, 30 amps, 20 feet, number 6. 30 amps, 30 feet comes up to number 4, and so on and so on and so on. Now when you get up in here into these lengths, I mean, that's the whole length of the RV, and that's, that's wackiness there. We don't need to worry about these numbers. The other thing is that if you look to the far left side of this, it will give you the approximate wire metric size, because when they size wires in metric, it's millimeters squared. And in the U.S. wire, the American wire gauges, the larger the number, the smaller the wire. So it's just counterintuitive to the way it should be. Let me pop back over here to the, this chart is only for DC and only 12 volt. If you get into AC, it's a completely different story. And there are charts out there for AC. We're not going to be talking about that tonight. And thank you, Tim, for putting the link in. You can go and download this chart yourself. Like I say, it is the most graphic, the most visual, the most easy to understand wire sizing chart that I have found out there on the World Wide Waste. I'm gonna jump back to this screen for just a minute. Okay, so I agree with you, Kevin, that I very greatly simplified what ampacity is, and for a very important reason. For the understanding of what folks are doing here, if they're trying to size a piece of wire, there are other considerations you have to take into account that I'm not going to talk about a whole lot, but they are important. And I will tell you that I am preparing an almost 6,000 word document. It should be ready to go here in another 2 or 3 days. It would have been done by now, except I've been sick. That describes all of the aspects of sizing wire down to the nth degree. But there are other considerations that you have to take into account. And the first of those, let's talk about conductor materials. That is either copper or aluminum. Those are the two most common wire types you're going to find. Copper will carry more amperage than aluminum. Okay? That's the basic rule of thumb. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that. But just keep in mind that copper and aluminum are popular choices, but copper can carry more amperage of the same size than aluminum. The wire size, as we mentioned, is important. The insulation is important, okay? There are 2 or 3 common types of wire that are used in automotive. The 2 most common are PVC, and the IEEE designates those as THHN. And then there's the XLP, I can't remember what that, cross-linked polyurethane or polyvinyl chloride, which can go to a little bit higher temperatures. And then we want to think about the surrounding environment. So I'll go back and I'll add one thing to my definition of ampacity, and that is the amount of current a wire can safely carry and still stay under its rated temperature. Keep in mind that when you're moving electricity on wire, there's resistance in that wire. Resistance turns into heat, and heat is a killer and can cause fires and all that sort of stuff. We're not going to go into that in too much in detail. The other thing to keep in mind is that if you're running cables and wires together, that one cable can heat another cable up. So let's say you have a lot of amps on one cable and it's getting hot. Well, if they're touching or they're very close together, the heat will transfer between the 2 different cables. Finally, the last type of wire insulation that is really common is, there's 2 types actually. There's a Teflon or silicone. Those typically are used in high temperature environments, something like the engine compartment of the car or something like that. It's really common for spark plug wires to be a silicone type because they can handle higher temperatures. And then the last type of insulation that's really common, and you'll find this on battery cables oftentimes, is rubber. And it's designated as S, or service type wire. Now, that's the general crux of sizing the wire. There's a lot more to it than I'm going to be able to explain in the 10 minutes that I had put aside for this. And as I said, I've got a really detailed document. I'll bring it up here. It's not quite ready for prime time, but let me just pop over here real quick and I'll show it to you. That I'm starting out with a glossary of all of the terms that we've talked about. There it is, XLPE, cross-linked polyurethane, etc., etc. Then we start talking about what ampacity is, selecting wire sizes, etc., etc. So I'm in the process of working on this. It's quite a lengthy document. I'll get it put together here and posted up on my website before next week probably, and I'll let you guys know where you can find it next week. The second question that was asked was terminating a cable. I found some video footage of me making a cable. It's not the best footage, but I want to jump over here to an email that Gary sent us the other day about the tools that he has for terminating wires. So let me pop this up here. We'll do a quick transition. Let me bring this down. Let me just double check here, make sure. Okay, can we see that? Okay, good. This is the Timco TH700. This is the crimp tool, and this is the one I have. Okay, and I'll show you how it works in just 1 second. Of course, there's good old electrician's pliers that have a crimping end up here. This is more of a crimp style tool, gives you a little bit more leverage. And then the best, I think, if you're making especially large cables, would be a hydraulic tool like this one that actually uses hydraulic pressure, and you pump it up and it makes a crimp on the cable. Now, let me bring this video up here, pop this up full size, and let me transition back over. Again, this isn't the best video, but you'll get the idea, and I'll talk you through it real quick. Let me just double check here. Okay, it looks good. And oops, I dropped that. There we go. Okay. And let's transition to that. Back over. Okay. And so here I am making a cable. These are 4/0 cable that I'm working with here. Those are lugs, copper, pure copper lugs. And so what I'm doing here is I'm measuring how much insulation I need to strip off to terminate this. And so you can see there, I'm showing you that you go back and then you want to score that insulation. And then the trick I like to use is once I've scored the insulation, watch how I'm bending the cable back and forth here to break the insulation. So I haven't cut all the way through, excuse me, into the copper. Now here's that Timco crimp tool, okay, the TH700, 777. It's really quite easy to use. Let me skip forward here just a bit. It's simple as lifting the jaw, positioning your lug, your termination in it, okay, putting it on a good firm surface, and then carefully making sure that you get the cable into the lug carefully, and then with a decent sized hammer, give it a good whack. And there you go, that is a terminated cable. Now before I do this other end, something I don't show you here, and I'll transition out of that because we don't need to watch that again. Something I didn't show is that I do have some heat shrink tubing, and I highly recommend that you put heat shrink tubing on the cable and heat her up, shrink her down, and you should be good to go. I'll do a full, I'm going to be making cables for the truck camper, and in fact I'm going to be doing that here real soon. I've decided I have all the equipment I have that I'm going to install in the truck camper. I've got my inverter charger, I've got my lithium batteries. I've got some of the other electronic equipment. I got my solar charge controller and those sorts of stuff. And I'm going to do a separate live stream on setting that up here on the bench over here to my left within the next couple of weeks here. And it won't be very formal. We're just going to kind of get together and we're going to put this all together and set it all up live, make some cables, hook everything up, plug some stuff in, and see if we can get it to work here on the bench. Before I try to install it out in the truck camper, where I'm installing it is a very tight compartment. I think it's going to be difficult to video. And so I thought that would be a better way to show how to, hook everything up. I'll do it live here, and then I'll grind it up, edit it down, and present it to you not only as a live stream, probably here within, like I say, a couple weeks, and then when I put it into the truck camper, I'll edit down what I did in the live stream and show it there, just for clarity on that. So it's 1/2 the hour. You'll have to excuse me for a minute, but I got to think my brother's going to be up here in just a second to get some help getting his socks on, because I heard the fan running. He must have been taking a shower. So anyway, you might get to see another cameo of my brother appear on screen here in just a minute. But usually at 1/2 the hour, I like to do a selfish, shameless plug and say, if you like the video, please give me that thumbs up. I always appreciate that. If you're not subscribed, subscribe, ring the notification bell. Be sure to slip over to my website at trbolin.com. I got a lot of really good content over there right now that I invite you to check out. Over on my website is a bunch of content that I don't have YouTube videos on. Now, truth be told, what I generally like to do is I like to put together an article for my website. I'll monitor the comments that come in. I'll estimate the interest in the article or in the information, and then put together a video on it. So, for example, you'll see there. Let me scroll down here so the screen's not scrolling on us. I've got an article up there on extending the lifespan of your RV's house batteries. And then with you guys' help, several weeks ago, we put together the Essential Ultimate Tool Checklist. And I've got it sitting up there. And it's been really popular. A lot of folks have been watching it. I did an article on preventing sulfation in your batteries. Sulfation is a battery killer. And so that is not on my web or on the YouTube. It will be soon. Top 10 RV tire maintenance tips, new tips for RV owners, some of the older articles about surge protection, using the vehicle's alternator to charge your RV batteries has been extremely popular. That will be the first video that comes out after I update my holding tank maintenance video, which will be coming towards the end of next month. RV startup and spring maintenance, dewinterizing. This one I just put out here the other day. Well, actually, this one posted today about mastering boondocking, 10 essential tips for conserving water and power, which is something that's really important. And then, of course, the ultimate guide to campground etiquette, something that just irritates the hell out of me. Are rude neighbors in campgrounds, and so this is sort of a pet peeve. You can be sure to see a video on that in the very near future. And then, of course, last week's topic, navigating border crossings. I did finally get that video or that article posted, and I invite you to go out to my website at trbolin.com and check all of those out if you're so inclined. I would appreciate your support, along with using Amazon. If you're so inclined to use Amazon, you can go to Amazon through the link in the video description. That will take you to Amazon. Then you can go anywhere on Amazon, purchase what you like. I'll get a small commission, but you'll pay the same price. And of course, there are affiliate links in there for RecPro and Renogy. I have Renogy equipment that we'll be setting up here in a couple weeks, and I hope you'll join me for that. Now, let's go check out. Oh, and by the way, Kevin, I was probably going to put the pinch on you to edit or at least review, and maybe Tim too. If you guys are both interested, I'd be happy to share the video or the article with you before I post it on ampacity and sizing wire, since you guys are both pretty experienced with electrical concerns and stuff like that. Okay, back to the chat. That's how we'll wrap her up tonight. Let me go in here and see what we're missing. Alrighty, let's see here. Oh, I did get a link. Let me go grab that real quick and share that with you for Dave's channel. I think I shared and RV Living Life. If you wouldn't mind dropping me a quick email with your channel link in it, I'd share yours too, because he's got a good channel too. We have a difference of opinion about borax, and I look forward to chatting with you about that in the near future. Smile, wink, wink. All right, let's see here. Yeah, RV Living Life. Yeah, drop me a quick email with your channel link in it, if you would, because I would love to share your channel as well. Robert says, if I make shorts, they'll watch them. Thanks, Robert. I do appreciate that. Wasting away again in Margaritaville. Love it. All right, still just scanning here. Yeah, so Robert, I believe that I saw Tim post the link to that chart, and he did post it, so thanks to that. Again, Kevin, I had to simplify it for the sake of the discussion for tonight, but there is a very detailed discussion in the article that we'll be posting on my website very soon. Montana Boy says number 8 wire usually on alternators. True. But if you go read the article I have on my website about alternator charging your RV's batteries, I discuss a little bit more in detail about sizing the wire for that, mostly because if you sit down and you think about it, if you're going from your alternator on the front of your tow vehicle, say your pickup, all the way back to your trailer batteries, that could be 25, 30 feet. And so you want to bump that wire size up quite a bit to go that length. A number 10 is not going to carry 30 amps or 40 amps that you might get off as excess off your alternator. So crimping tools, Gary, I believe I did share those. XPLE, thanks, Kev. Yeah, I couldn't remember that in the heat of the matter. John Besmick, doesn't it change with stranded wire versus solid? Yes, very subtly, very slightly, but not enough to make a difference. The other thing is that in mobile, excuse me, I can't wait till this damn RSV stuff clears up, trust me. In mobile applications, it's always best to use stranded wire. And here's why. Stranded wire is made so that it flexes, okay? So if you're moving around, that wire can flex a little bit inside the insulation cover. A solid wire doesn't flex and will fatigue and fail much sooner than stranded wire. I always wondered about this in structured cabling, like in the data cabling that you find in buildings, and this is something I do know a fair amount about. Whenever you're running from like a patch panel in a closet to a desk, you use solid wire because that wire never moves, or rarely ever moves. You might relocate a port or something like that. But when you're going from the plug in the wall to your computer, you use stranded wire because that cable can move all the time. And so just keep in mind that the main difference as far as stranded versus solid, yeah, there's some subtle differences in how much current they can carry. It's not important in this particular application, but it's the application of how that cable can move and slide inside that insulation. So as you're running down the road and things are moving around, if you've got a solid hunk of wire there, it could be flexing and at some point break, whereas a stranded cable is much less likely to break in an application where it might be moving a lot. Okay, yeah, and that's a good point, Gary. I used copper-coated aluminum wire in the truck camper. It is significantly less expensive than pure copper wire. And in the case of the truck camper, I wasn't worried about it. I think you're probably going to find in a lot of the budget RVs, budget trailers, they're probably going to be using copper-coated aluminum. And it's just fine. In a critical load inside of a building, or I built data centers, and in data centers, I would never have approved. A little bit different and some other stuff, but they're not significant in the application about what we're talking about as far as RVs go. Copper-clad, yeah, that's right. Okay, correct wires and current. Thermal conduction can create issues with other circuits. Yep. Okay. Tim, okay, he says he has another one that covers the fine wire battery cables. Interesting, yeah. And there are some subtle differences between and the size of the strands inside of the cable. It's really weird. Yeah, a different chart for USAC nuts during residential and commercial electrical nuts. Yep. And I actually have posted in one of my videos, it's probably in my installing solar on my Class A video, where I talk about wire nut size and the number of wires you can terminate together with wire nuts. Yeah, and that's a good point. Montana Boy mentions it. He always solders all his crimps once he's done with the crimping process. There's no corrosion on solder joints. On small cables, that's fine. You start to get up into 2-aught, 3-aught, 4-aught cables, it is really difficult to solder those and not melt the insulation on the cable itself. I tried, and I would much prefer that. In fact, I will show you next week. I'll see if I can dig this up. I have thermal video of my inverter. This is from back in 2017 or 2018. And on the inverter I had in my Class A, I had a cable that I had soldered. There was an existing cable that had a crimp on it. And you could see definite heat differences in those cables. I'll dig those up and share those with you next week. Make myself a note here. Now, I'm going to say it is not totally impossible to solder a 4-aught cable and a copper lug, but it is challenging. Let's leave it at that. But that is a dang good idea, especially on smaller conductors. And it is a great tip. Sturtevite, I've got some photos and video of that too, Kevin, and we can talk about that. When I rebuilt my toilet, it's not in my toilet rebuilding video, but when I rebuilt my toilet, the first time I took it off the downspout, the stem, I had a 1/4 inch of Sturtevite. And what Sturtevite is that hard water accumulation that's built up over time, and it actually turns into sturtivite. It's like stone. And I've got a great sample and some video of that. I can probably dig that up for next week too, so I'll add that to the list. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Yeah, I need some cough drops for sure. RV Living Life says he has a decent video on making battery cables. Awesome. No, not that, on borax. I think it was you. It might be another channel, but a channel that I watched, and in fact some viewers of this channel on the live stream, this has been last fall or early winter, had mentioned that there was a video out there about somebody that was not happy with the way borax was being used, or was being used, and it was causing damage. And unfortunately, maybe it wasn't you, it might have been somebody else. But yeah, if you just dump borax into your stool and you flush it, you're going to grind the seals right out of it. You need to dilute it, and it does not dilute. A half a cup of borax will not dilute in a half a cup of water. You're going to get a super saturated solution, and it's going to turn into rocks. And so there's a very specific way. It's actually pretty simple. Put a gallon to a gallon and a half of water in the stool, add the borax to it, swirl it up, and then send it down the stack. Or alternatively, just open the valve, drop the borax straight into the tank, and it's good to go. It doesn't build up in the tank. It will eventually dissolve. And I'd used borax in my holding tanks. Well, now, since I figured that out in 2013, 10 years, and I never had a problem with it damaging the seals in my toilet or damaging the seals in my holding tank drain valves. It could do that if it's not used properly. And in fact, side story, I got time. One of my neighbors at the RV park in Tucson, he'd watched my video. The first thing he did was go get some borax, pour it in the stool. He didn't dilute it in the stool. He went to flush his toilet, and he basically scarred his seal, and then his toilet wouldn't hold water. And once I explained to him what he'd done, he was like, oh, yeah, I mean, now it's like, I can't believe I was that stupid. Well, it wasn't stupid. It's just, I don't equate things to stupid or not stupid, because I make a lot of stupid mistakes. Oh, got a tornado out there. Yeah, you can have them tornadoes. Okay, let me go back and catch up on the chat about a battery charger that's supposed to take care of that. Okay, yeah. Sulfation, it only really occurs if you're not charging or keeping your batteries charged properly. And we could talk about that next week, or maybe 2 weeks. We got a lot to talk about next week. But we'll put that in there. Let me add this in here onto my notes. And then also in the interim, I highly recommend just go read the article on my website about it. It's brief, and it's pretty informative, I think. Yeah, and by the way, yeah, there are battery chargers out there that supposedly can blast the sulfur crystals off the lead plates. They do that by pulsing really high voltage charges through the battery, and that helps dislodge the sulfur from the plates. We could talk about that for a while too if you'd like. Be happy to talk about that. Dave Cockrell, okay, he says, I never thought about ramping up my wire size on the plug from my pickup to the camper. I know it's a larger wire than the rest, but it could be bigger. Yeah, it's a common problem. Again, heat in wire starts fires, which ruin vacations. Leave it that simple. Okay, Montana boy, yeah, okay. Lime deposits, yes, sturtivite is lime deposit mineral. Kevin Coop was the one that was telling me, the guy in the video with the rock borax in his jug, he did not mix it up right. Thanks. RV Living Life. Yeah, I use Noalox on my battery cables, but I've never used borax in my toilet. Okay, I couldn't remember, what was what. Montana Boy, he says, I used your borax and orange cleaner in both tanks. They are now working better, and the sensors work well now, where they were not working or showing right. Yeah, it's miracle stuff. It looks like rocket. It works like rocket fuel. Let's see. You have to have the hard water to make sturtivite. Yes. Borax softens the water. Yes. But not the source water. So if you have hard water at the tap, the borax softens the water once it gets into the tank. But when you're dumping water in, if it's not soft already, it will build up sturtivite, lime scale, whatever you want to call it, in the dumps in the stem, and yeah, it can cause we all mistakes. Just got to avoid making the same mistakes over and over again. Yeah, absolutely. And then Tim says, I think sturtivite is what's keeping my tank sensors from working correctly. It could be. Tim, I want you to think about this, and this is something that I'm working on for the new video on maintaining your holding tanks. And I stumbled across the concept of, think about painting a wall. Think about how your holding tanks work. You fill them, you drain them. You fill them, you drain them. You fill them, you drain them. There's all kinds of material suspended in that water. There's sludge, there's slime, there's partially dissolved paper, large particulate matter that's partially dissolved. And as you fill and drain, that water gets deposited, the material in that water gets deposited on the wall of that tank like a layer of paint. And fill and drain, fill and drain, fill and drain. And so what you have to do is you got to get that crud off those sensors. The other thing to keep in mind is that those sensors just barely poke through the wall of your tank, unless you have the capacitance type sensor, which sticks on the outside of the wall of the tank and measures the capacitance through the tank. And as the water raises and lowers in the tank, it can measure that difference in capacitance. The way they tell the difference between those, if you have a holding tank gauge that reads 10, 20, 30, 40, 50%, something like that, then you probably have the capacitance type sensors. If you have level indicators that are, say, 1/3, 2/3, full, 1/4, 1/2, 3/4 full, if they're the large block numbers like that, then you have the through-the-wall tank sensors. I can probably really easily pull up a sample of what those sensors look like. Give me just 1 second here to pop over here to my cache of documents that I'm putting together for the update to the holding tank video that I'm really excited about. I've been working with some people you've heard me talk about for a while, Tiffany Everett, who is just this amazing, talented young lady who is an amazing illustrator, and she's working on a cover slide for me that is just cute as can be. And so I look forward to sharing that with you. Let's see. Okay, so these would be an example of a larger holding tank sensor. Let me pop this around here and do this. So that's an example of ones that stick through the wall quite a ways. Okay, and they're probably a little better than this type. Let's see if those are in here. Let's see. Oh yeah, so there we go. Oh, this is not a very high quality image, but it shows an example of both types. Here are the type that go through the tank wall, if you see them here. And then here is the capacitance type sensor, and it reads the level of the tank through the wall itself. And then one last picture here I might have. Doesn't look like it, but I'm sure you can just imagine it's just a little button of steel that pokes through the wall of the tank. And all it basically does is it shorts out. So when the level of the water comes up to, say, the third of a tank level, then that shorts and goes to ground. The sensor sees that and says, okay, I'm a third full. And then as it fills more, it gets up to, say, a half or 2/3. It shorts, and then it says, okay, I can see I'm 2/3 full. But if those sensors get covered with crud, and it may be sturtivite, I'm not saying that it can't be, but they stop working because they're not getting wet, and so they don't short. The capacitive type, the ones that read through the wall of the tank, those are really known for when the wall of the tank gets crudded up, stopping working because they only work through a certain amount of plastic. And as you add those layers of paint, like we were talking, that's what causes them to not read correctly. So it could be sturtivite. I suspect you need to do the road flush, Tim. And and we're sort of out of time. We'll talk about the road flush next week if you are so inclined. Let's go back over here and catch up on the sensors are external. Okay, then it's most likely that Tim says his sensors are external, and it's most likely that there's a layer of crud accumulated on it, or if your sensors are really old, they could have just failed. The older style, not the electronic style that I just showed you, but the older style were really sensitive to the walls of the tank getting crudded up, and then also just wearing out. It's the type I had on my 04 were through the wall sensors, but they didn't work when I first got the RV. They were really wore out. But I replaced them with the C Level 2, SEALEVEL 2 sensors. They're not cheap. It was $250, but it gave you the gray, black, and freshwater sensors, so it wasn't a bad deal. And a new dashboard to put in your overhead to where you monitor your tanks. Okay, Montana Boy, what do you do if you are looking for a new black tank replacement? Do they make them from back in the 90s? He just had a person come to me with this issue. Yeah, you can buy replacement holding tanks. Rec Pro sells them. Probably what you would end up having to do, though, is to figure out what shape the tank is, depending upon where it is. If it's in a travel trailer, it's easier to get out. But find the size of the tank that you've got existing, and then go search the World Wide Waste. You're bound to find a holding tank that's going to be very close to the same size as the one you have, and they're readily available out on the web, and that's the way I would do that. Oh, he says, okay, I've considered a second spray nozzle in my black tank and adding one to the gray tank. You know, if they weren't so hard to get to, that might not be a bad idea, RV Living Life. I mean, it's perfectly, absolutely, possible. I think in the gray tank, though, if you follow my recommendations in my holding tank video that's live on YouTube now, or you hang around for another month when the new one comes out, you probably won't need to add one to the gray tank because of the stuff that goes into the gray tank is different than what goes into the black tank. And that's why they don't really install them from the factory. Adding a second one to your black tank might not be a bad idea, because sometimes black tanks, especially in Class A's, are wacky shapes. They're not just square tanks. Sometimes they're wacky. Sometimes they have a lower, they look like an L. They kind of try to fit them into the frame as much as they can. And sometimes they're really hard to flush. And yeah, that's a good point. Tim says he had to remember I bought his Journey when it was 14 years old, so he didn't have any idea on how well the tanks were maintained. I'll tell you this. Here's the symptoms that your holding tanks have not been maintained properly. They stink, and your level sensors don't work. Okay? There's two symptoms. Those are the two symptoms. I'll guarantee you 9 times out of 10, if your holding tank sensors are not working, the tanks have not been maintained properly. It's easy to fix, and coming up in the video, it'll be towards the end of the month. I've got I've been experimenting with this for a long time, and I've got more tips and tricks on how to fix that stuff, and it'll all be in the new video coming up real soon. He says he'd still like more flushing. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with extra flushing, but you might also look at the road flush too. And basically what the road flush is that you fill your tank about a third full, add borax and Dawn dish soap or orange cleaner, depending upon which tank. Orange cleaner in the gray tank, Dawn dish soap in the black tank, and then go for a ride. Go out for a nice, strong, long drive. Or let's say you're going from your home to an RV park. Before you leave your house, fill your tank a third, half full, add some borax, the Dawn or the orange cleaner, depending upon which is appropriate. Drive to that RV park, and then dump your tanks, and you're going to be shocked at the crud that will come out of those tanks. Okay, we're coming up on 8 o'clock. We're after 8. Let's see here. Sea level, RV Living Life, sea level sensors are what I have. They work well. Yes, they do. And I never had a lick of trouble with mine after I put them on. Robert Black says, can you pull the sensors and clean them and reinstall them? You sure can. The problem is, if they're old, then it's very likely that when you pull them out, you will never get them sealed back up. And replacement sensors are not expensive, Robert. They're $14 for a set of 4. Maybe a little more than that, but they're not expensive. Montana Boy says, yeah, those sensors are really modified, glorified old Wii alarms. Yeah, back in the 70s. He uses an IC chip for them water sensors, an LM3914 or an LM3916. Interesting. Tim says, my method took care of the odor, but I think the stir divide is very thick. Yeah, there are a lot of DIY circuits that anyone can do. Yeah, there are. But the sea level sensors, they just, it's a great system. And like I say, they're a couple $100. And for the average person, I don't know I'm familiar enough with electronics. I mean, I have fiddled with it. If you go look at some of my vlogs from way back, I've been playing with like Raspberry Pis, and I've got several data loggers that I built out of Raspberry Pis and various other things. So I would agree that most folks could probably sort it out, but the easiest path is probably just to go ahead and buy the C Level 2. I highly recommend that. And you can support the channel by going to Amazon and getting it through my channel. Yes, they are. I believe they are in the store, handy items for RV owners on Amazon. I believe they're in there. Let me go look real quick. Hang on here. We'll just do a quick split screen. Just a minute. Where did it go? Back over here. And let's go here. And we're okay, and then we'll transition here. And now this is just, you can basically go to Amazon /shop/TR handy items for RV owners. Let's see, a number of items on there. No, but they are on Amazon. Let's see, C, I think it's C level to sea level tank monitor. And it's this one. Looks like the inflation has driven them up a little bit. But yeah, this one actually will replace pretty much everything. It'll give you your battery, your fresh, your gray, your black, and your LP gas. And so inflation has driven them up a little bit, but this is the best right here. It comes with all the sensors and everything you need to monitor all of your equipment. Okie doke. Last call for questions. Yeah, you know, RV Living Life, that would be really cool, and I agree with you, is to hook up your sea level sensors to your Victron Servo GX. It would be really great to see the levels. And, you know, that's not a bad idea. It sounds like maybe Montana Boy might be able to help us engineer that connection. That might be a really cool, nice thing to have. And Gary uses the adapter that has a spinning spray, and it works good if you've got water pressure. Yeah, and those are the ones I recommend for those folks that don't want to, go through the heartbreak of psoriasis of installing, one in the top of the tank. And they call it the swivel stick. It's this one that we're talking about here. These things work really good. Hook it to your regular hose, stick this in down the turlet. This little metal thing here spins, and they're very effective at rinsing the tanks. And they cost $25. Okay. Yep. Good night, George. Thanks. Good night, Eric. Appreciate you guys being here. We are calling it an evening. RV Living Life says they have the sea level control panel in the wet bay and the bathroom. That's cool. Let's see. As to why my gray tank never had a rinse port. Yeah, because the materials going in the gray tank aren't sludgy, cruddy, nasty like what goes in the black tank. They're cruddy, nasty that goes in the gray tank, but this is not the same volume. And just rinsing it, doing what I call the road flush, is usually enough to clean out the gray tank. And there's more to follow on that in the very near future. So stay with me. You'll get a real good education on that, probably here in the next 3 to 4 weeks. Thanks, Tim. Good night. Good night, Robert. Appreciate you being here. Good night, Scott. Thanks a lot. Thanks, RV Living Life. Do stop by more often. We'd love to have you here. Enjoy your input and your great ideas. Good night, Eric. Appreciate you. Okay, good night, Montana Boy. Very active group tonight. Agree, Gary. It was a good time. Good time was had by all. All right. Thanks all. We'll see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Until we get together then, peace. Good night. Thanks for watching.